Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
For as much as it's important to remember the difficulties and challenges of leadership, it's also vital that we keep touch with the inner joy that is the right of every leader. Christian leaders especially have the obligation to embody this joy because we serve at the pleasure of the greatest of rulers, Jesus Christ. But staying joyful in leadership is not always easy. In this first part of our new series, we study the first secret to joyful leadership, casting a vision for a dream worth dreaming. Hey everybody, glad to be back with you again. And this time, I want to start a new series with you. I want to envision with you something joyful. Because a lot of times I know that we've been able to stress the difficulties or challenge points of leadership as a place where we meet God. But we have to also remember that we meet God by our joy and in our joy, that God is a joyful thing. And so leading in Christ and from faith ought to be something that's also joyful. But it's easy to forget that. It's easy because whenever we're leading, we're taking people from one point of that we're already sure into the unknown. We're taking people from something that they control into something that is new, that they have to trust you in order to accept your leadership. Leadership is a difficult thing because we're kind of pioneers that exist in the forefront where things are dark and cold and frankly where people don't necessarily want to dwell very often. And so we have to overcome lethargy, the lethargy of being addicted to the status quo, the lethargy of just taking things in as they are. And we have to apply effort in order to effectuate the change that we want to see. And this is just part and parcel of it. So we can oftentimes emphasize that difficulty and the solitude that comes from that leadership. But that's not the only part of it. And in fact, if we emphasize that too much, we make leadership all about ourselves. And we forget that people will more easily follow a joyful leader than they will a leader that is morose or focused so much on their own challenge points. St. Francis de Sales says it so well. He says that a spoonful of honey will attract more flies than a barrel of vinegar. And it's true, right? I mean, the most winsome thing on the face of a leader is a smile. The thing that gives confidence more than anything else is to see the passion, the joy that's inside their hearts when they start talking about or casting the vision for the end that we're all trying to achieve. Right? You're not going to follow someone who acts like they don't even want to get to the place they want you to go. If we want to get followers behind us, we need ourselves to embody and embrace, well, more than just the vision, but the joy that comes from that vision. And I understand it's very difficult to do, especially if depending on your temperament, of course. I mean, some people just have a natural temperament that's buoyant, and they have no problem whatsoever staying joyful at all times, right? But those people are rare. And especially they're rare in roles of leadership because leaders bear responsibility. And responsibility has a way of bringing us inward, making us focus in on ourselves, frankly, because we focus in on the pain that we have to endure, or we internalize what we have to do and we make it something that's very personal to ourselves, like our own reputation or our own person is invested in bringing the team to achieve this goal. And all those things, the more that we look inward and the more that we're aware of ourselves and that our own inner lives are driving us in our leadership, the more difficult it is to remain joyful. And this is an easy thing because when you look at St. Thomas Aquinas in the Summa Theologica, the second part, question 28 on joy, Thomas says that joy comes from two things. It comes from the presence of the good that we love near us in our lives. That we have something that we love, and that thing that we love is near to us. So think of the joy that a little puppy gives to a young girl at Christmas time, right? The thing she longs for is near her, and she just squeals with joy and delight because of the presence of the good that she loves. And if you take that puppy away from her, then she starts to cry, right? So that's a little example, right? But it's the truth. When something is good and that we love and is near us, we become joyful. But then Thomas goes on and he says, no, there's yet another way to have joy. And that's when the thing that we love is itself in a state of perfection or is well. So you could be joyful even if your spouse is not with you, if you know that your spouse is supremely happy. You send your spouse on a retreat with the St. John Leadership Network, and while they're there basking in the joy of God, you're joyful because you know that they are advancing on the way to holiness and that they themselves are well. Right? And just in the same way, sorrow comes from two things. It either comes from the absence of the thing that we love, or it comes from the fact that the thing that we love is suffering or is impeded from having a flourishing or state of perfection that is its due, right? So you have this way, Thomas has this way of looking at joy, which is very non-emotional. If you just notice that, because most of the time we think of joy and we say, okay, joy means that I have to be smiling and have to be seem happy and have this sparkle in my eye. And yes, there's a lot to that. That's the way we manifest joy. And that's very important for us as leaders. It's not enough just to say, I have a joy in my heart. When you're a leader, you need to share that joy. You need to show that joy so that the people whom you are inspiring can catch some of that joy themselves. If they don't see it or they don't feel it in you, well, of course, it's going to be hard for them to believe that it's there, right? So there's a secret to this, and we're going to talk about this later on in the series, the secret of joyful leadership, of showing that joy. But remember that that showing can't be fake. It's got to be real. And so it's got to be founded and grounded in something which is true, right? So I want to focus in on those two aspects with you that Thomas gives us here. And Thomas Aquinas, and it's such a beautiful thing. He literally defines joy as being in the presence of a good that we love. Now, here's my question for you. Is that true for you? Would your spouse, would your children be able to say, yeah, mom loves Jesus and Jesus is in her heart. And so since Jesus is in her heart, she is joyful. But they ought to be able to. I mean, Thomas will later on in the same section go on to say that this is why the source of joy is the love of God in our heart. Literally, he says that charity is what causes joy. Now, charity is a fancy word in our religion, but it means that our share of the love of God. When God's love is in a soul, that soul is joyful because the love of God, which is, of course, what draws all of us forward, is present to us. Jesus came to give us the gift of faith, and by the gift of faith, God dwells in our hearts. And so since God dwells in our hearts, well, there's joy. But you notice, he doesn't say you jump up and down. He doesn't say that you do backflips. He doesn't say you throw parties. He says that you are aware of the presence of the one that you love. And this is the secret that I want to draw home with you. That it's not something that you feel necessarily. It's something that you know. Almost like joy is the effect of the peace of knowing that your life is in its true order, that you are living for God. And so as leaders, that's our first responsibility. If I'm going to be joyful in my leadership, is my leadership directing itself towards the right thing? Am I pursuing not just the whatchamacallits that I produce or not just the daily tasks that I accomplish, but am I pursuing the big picture, right? Am I accomplishing a deeper meaning and purpose with my work? If I am, well, then I have a right to claim the joy that's the fruit of that good thing being accomplished in my life.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So as we read St. Thomas Aquinas together, we've discovered that he's teaching us that joy means that something that we love and that is authentically and truly good for us is near us. So there can be kind of like a false joy too, therefore, when you've got something that we think is good, but it isn't good. But if it's near us, it appears to be a joy. We rejoice all the same, even though the thing itself might not be good. We express joy. That's different from an authentic joy and a true joy, where the thing is really good for us and it's near us. That's a deep satisfaction in our life. And it's a satisfaction that belongs to us who know God. Why? Because God is authentically the end goal of everything that we have in our hearts. You cannot find anything more supremely lovable than God. All right? So if we then, who are Christians, profess to know God and profess to follow Jesus, who gives us a communion with God, with the Father, right, in himself, well, then God dwells in our hearts. Now, what does a leader look like when God dwells in their hearts? That's the question. Well, if God dwells in our hearts, then St. Thomas says joy is the effect of that. And he doesn't go on to describe how it feels, because maybe it's not about how it feels. Maybe it's about the deep peace of truth, okay? Knowing that deep down inside, you are on the right path. A leader walks in joy because they walk in truth. Right? So this is the vision of Aquinas. And I think it's a really good one. Because if you know, even if you know that things are right in your life, then you have a joy deep down inside of your heart. There's this kind of radiance where things are right. You have your house in order and you've got your little dog too, right? So to speak. And you've got your little dog and your little dog is happy and healthy and the kids are just humming along and there's joy. There's the fullness of what your life could be because what is good is near you, right? This charity in our hearts, that's the key. So what does that look like in terms of our leadership? Well, a joyful leader is someone who's pointing their group towards what they know is truly good. Okay, so joyful leadership, the secret to it is that you need to be sure and convince yourself that the endeavor that you're accomplishing, that you're shooting towards, is actually worth it. That what you're trying to strive to achieve is actually something that is good. And when you know this, and most of what you do, of course, is good. And if you're not convinced that it's good, well, let's just stop right there and go back for a second. Remember that the vocation of a business leader is to become sanctified by doing business. Well, what does business do? It provides goods or services to those in need. Well, in a real way, you're contributing to the outreach of God to a broken world by bringing good goods and good services at the right affordable price in a way that's sustainable and that generates wealth that then goes to build up everything around it and increase the system's efficiency. This is an amazing thought, and yet that's how it works. Your business is itself an answer to prayers if you deliver goods that are really good and services that really serve. So then the question becomes, are you convinced yourself of the value of what you do? I remember one time I was speaking at a young adult gathering, and I was asking the young adults what they did for a living. And I figured I would do this because few people really spend time complimenting them on their career paths. And I remember there was in the room, different people were saying different things. And there was a group that was kind of bashful. And I said, what do you do? And they say, well, we lay, underground plumbing. And they kind of looked down almost as if this was not something that they should be proud of. And I just kind of like built them up in front of the crowd because it really struck me, what they do is so incredibly important for health, for the comfort of living, for the standard of living. And I went so far as to tell them, like, listen, if Jesus was, working in today's economy in the city where you live, well, he wouldn't, blink an eye at doing the work that you're doing. And I think it's really important that we all understand that even something that might seem humble in our own eyes isn't necessarily humble in the eyes of God. The world needs everything done for it. We need to be able to provide for our own survival and then for the good things in life so that our life can be, maximized. We don't spend all of our time hunting and gathering, but instead we can have communication and the communion of hearts that come from it, that we can live an authentically beautiful family life. Well, that requires that every detail of our world be taken care of. And that's the vocation of those who live in this world, to take care of it in the name of God. So we need to really, adjust. If we're leading a group, a company, a team, a management, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we ourselves see the end goal as it ought to be. And we embrace the beauty of what we're doing. And I agree we shouldn't romanticize this or make this into more than it is, but at the same time, what you're doing is noble. And if you don't hold your own head up high and say, this is a worthy way for me to spend my time, you will not be leading in joy. The leadership in joy requires that you see the good that you're achieving and that you bring that goodness of what you're achieving, you make it present for your team, that you remind them of the impact that they're making and the pride that they should have in what they're doing. It comes from, in small ways, it comes from the ways that we write our emails, the ways that we bear ourselves in our meetings, the attitude that we take to being punctual, and the attitude that we take also in the way that we spend our time at work. Do we ourselves embody the care for our jobs and for the care for our workplace? Well, that we want our people to embody. It all starts with us. You can't get around it. The pride of workmanship of those who work for us or work under our leadership will to be a direct relationship with the pride that we exhibit in what we do. I remember I used to have a job as a roofer, and I remember that our foreman of the team was a very respected individual. Everybody on the roofing crew loved this guy and would respect him and follow what he said. And I asked him one time, what's the secret to your leadership? And he said to me, well, it's really simple. I show up to work with clean clothes every day, and I don't cuss. And I thought, isn't that something? I never forgot that. I was only a teenager at the time, but I admired the fact that everybody looked up to him. And the secret was that simple. He acted like what he was doing was worthy of his time. He showed up in clean clothes to work every day, which is not something that you always do when you're a roofer. It's a dirty job. It's easier just to put the same pants back on every day. And this guy would wear a clean pair of pants to work every day. He would attack the job as if it was worthy of him. And by doing so, the team followed in that same attitude. And I think that's joyful leadership. And that's something that a Christian leader, we ought to be embodying in a special way, because we are literally doing what we're doing as an extension of God's love for the world. That ought to make us joyful. The presence of love in our hearts from God is literally what's motivating us, or should be motivating us, to do what we do at work each day. If it doesn't, I suggest you get a different job. You need to realign what you do. Because if you're not joyful in what you do, and love is not present motivating you in what you do, well, you're missing out. You're missing out, and the people that are around you are also missing out on having a leader who really believes and therefore is joyful in what they're doing.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So going back to Aquinas, just to refocus ourselves, he says that there's 2 ways that a person can be joyful. One is to have the presence of the good that they love near them, right? So when you love something and you want something, and then you have that thing near you, well, there's a joy that comes from the presence of that thing that you love, right? So that joyful leadership should be exhibited by every Christian leader, who goes to work every day knowing that what they're doing has value in the eyes of God, is authentically good, and is truly a service that makes people's lives better. And of course, communicating that becomes essential, because wouldn't it be great if we were able to show our people every day, or at least once a week, the impact that they're making, the way that their lives and their work and labor is contributing to be making the world a better place for other people. I mean, if our good is really good and our services really serve, well, we should celebrate them. And that celebration of that leadership leads to pride, and that, of course, in a good sense, and that pride of work and ownership leads to deep joy in the hearts of other people, and it starts with the leader. But Aquinas goes on to say that there's another type of joy, and it's not necessarily just from the presence of the thing that you love being near you, but when you have something that you love and you see that it is good and fulfilled in itself. So he's speaking here about the joy like of a parent. You let your child go and they're no longer living in your house with you, and yet you're deeply joyful because you know that they're doing what they were made to do. They are fulfilled. And because you love them, their fulfillment makes you happy, makes you joyful, I should say. Because again, he doesn't describe how it feels. He simply says it's almost like the property of knowing, it's what you feel, okay? Each one of you individually and differently, when you know that what you've dedicated yourself to is flourishing and surviving in the best way that it can, that it's actually good. So you produce a good, and that itself is something that makes you joyful because your love is involved in the doing. But when you realize that what you have done has yielded a fruit that's even beyond what you yourself created, that you've contributed in a thriving way to the betterment of our world, well, that itself is a deeper sense of joy. I've seen this, for example, in tradesmen, people who work in the trades. And at the end of it, there's a type of real satisfaction in saying that for 20 years they worked as a mechanic. Or for 20, 30 years, they're part of the union, for example, of mechanics, or the union for truckers. There's almost like they look with satisfaction at how the industry itself has been built up through their labors, the changes that has been made in the course of history by what they've done as a member of something bigger than themselves. And I think this comes as almost like a fruit of virtue. It comes from a fruit of someone who's lived a life where you've really been dedicated to doing what you have to do each day as if God sent you there. When you realize that my workplace is more than where I make money, it's actually where God has sent me on a mission from God, well, then I attack that workplace in the individual days with love for God. And therefore, with the love that God has also for what he's given me to do. And that love becomes infectious and contagious for everybody who's around me. They start to love what they do because I'm leading them from within. I'm leading them from my joy. The joy that, as Aquinas says, is the property of having that love inside of you for what you're doing. But it's more than even what you do each day. That's what I'm trying to make this point with a second understanding or deeper understanding of the joy. And that's to describe the joy that comes from having lived that way for years and recognizing behind you that you've left a legacy. I mean, how wonderful to see the bank that you used to manage thriving, or to see the university where you taught at being built up, your department being even bigger and greater than what you were able to do for it. It's very similar, again, to seeing parents and the way as parents, your family does more than you could ever have done on your own. I mean, what a satisfaction of looking backward and saying everything that we did has now yielded such incredible fruit. There's a deep satisfaction from a life of virtue. We did our part, and now look at where this family has gone. Look at where this school has grown to. And that type of leadership of joy is very important. Why? Because it keeps alive in the hearts of everyone the understanding that our lives are not just made for this earth, that there's something transcendent, something wonderfully beautiful in everything that we do and that we get to do with our time here on earth. I mean, in a kind of a humorous way, it's the way that we feel when we listen to Louis Armstrong sing It's a Wonderful World. You know, you kind of take a step back and you say, oh my goodness, like in the end, you know, the sacrifices that we made and the leadership that we produced has lifted the level of living around me in ways that are both quantitative and also qualitative. Like, you know, when you get someone who comes back to you and then says, thank you, because you've inspired me to be a better person. Working with you has made me a better person. I mean, that's an incredible joy. And leading in that joy means leading people constantly with that big picture. And I think that this is really where it gets important. You know, a lot of times I work with different organizations, you know, in the Catholic world, the Christian world, Catholic world, that speak about how they develop leaders. And usually when you look at what they do, well, it's kind of like, well, they have some business courses, they do a couple personality inventories, and then they throw in a couple ethics courses, right? And it always kind of, I shake my head a little bit on that. We can do better than that. Okay, it's not just a couple of ethics courses that are going to make you a leader. It's when you realize that you, as a leader present with your people each day, get to bring inspiration to their lives for the higher things, that you can bring dignity and honor to their workplace. And by doing that, you impact who they are when they're not at work. That's what it means to lead in joy, is to keep the big picture in the picture. And that every day what my focus on is not just what we're doing, but on the betterment of the lives of the people who do it. By the respect I show them, the inspiration I give them, the way that I honor them as workers and as people. That's the biggest picture. And that belongs to you by right. You get to do this every day if you claim your role as a truly leader in Christ, who of course leads us into joy.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.